She thought silence would break you at first. It was subtle, a missed call here, a delayed reply there. She shifted her energy just enough for you to notice, but not enough to confront. She wanted to see what you'd do. Would you chase? Would you fight to stay in her orbit? Would you prove to her that she still held power over you? But you didn't. You didn't rush in with explanations. You didn't argue or accuse. You didn't even ask why. You just stayed. Still, composed, present in your own world, and that's when everything changed. What she expected was resistance, a man scrambling to fix things. What she got was stillness, and it shook her to her core. Because for the first time, you weren't fighting for her. You weren't playing the game. You were showing her without words that your value didn't come from being accepted, but from knowing exactly who you are. And in that moment, she felt it. Not rejection, not even anger, but a cold, creeping realization. You weren't like the others. You were different. And a difference. It didn't make you forgettable. That made you unforgettable. And now, all she can do is wonder why you didn't fight. Why that still hurts more than anything you could have said. It didn't happen all at once. The shift came like a quiet storm, slow, subtle, but unmistakable. One morning you noticed her tone had softened, but not in a warm way, more like a curtain being drawn across a window that used to let the light in. She used to greet you with excitement. No, it was just convenience. The calls grew shorter. The laughs didn't come as easily. The emotional intimacy that once felt effortless began to feel like work. She wasn't gone, but she was slipping. She wanted you to notice. Most men would panic here. Most men would start asking, is something wrong? Most men would start proving, performing, persuading, but not you. You didn't match her shift with a reaction. You matched it with observation, because you understood something she didn't expect you to know. When someone pulls away, it isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about the story they're writing in their head, one where they need to feel missed, desired, chased. And when you didn't play into that, when you didn't flinch or cling, she felt something unfamiliar. Not just distance, but uncertainty. Because for the first time, you weren't the one losing her. She was losing the man who never needed to beg to be kept. And that, right there, is the first crack in her emotional plan. She never said, I'm testing you. She didn't have to. It was in the delay of her messages. In the way she suddenly had plans she didn't explain. In the way her warmth turned cool, not cold, just cool enough to keep you wondering. She wanted you to feel uncertain. She wanted to see if you'd fight, if you'd lose your center trying to win her back. This was her emotional litmus test. The one most men fail. Because the moment she pulls back, they overcompensate. They get loud. They get desperate. They get weak. But not you. You didn't react. You didn't accuse. You didn't lean in harder. You leaned back. Not out of spite, but out of self-possession. It wasn't a game for you. It was clarity. If her affection needed to be chased, it wasn't affection. If her attention required performance, it wasn't real. And in that calm confusion, when she expected sparks and drama, she got something she didn't know how to handle. Stillness. She thought your silence was indifference. But deep down, it wasn't that you didn't care. It was that you cared enough not to abandon your dignity just to pass her test. You let her drift without chasing. And instead of pushing you further away, she began to wonder, why didn't he react? Why didn't he panic? Did I miscalculate his heart? Or his strength? That quiet question echoed louder than any argument. Because your unshaken calm didn't just pass the test. It rewrote the rules entirely. It wasn't about you not loving her. It wasn't about something you did wrong. It was about something she didn't know how to name, her need for emotional proof. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to feel wanted, desperately, visibly, undeniably. In drama. And when your presence started feeling secure, she mistook it for routine. That's the quiet tragedy of modern love. A woman can mistake safety for boredom, peace for distance, stability for indifference. So she created uncertainty not because she didn't care, but because she wanted to feel powerful again, to feel pursued again. And when you didn't react the way she hoped, when you didn't give her emotional fireworks in exchange for her silence, She was forced to confront something she never expected. She wasn't losing your love. She was losing her ability to control how you showed it. She wanted reassurance, but disguised it as withdrawal. She wanted to feel irreplaceable, but tried to get there by making you feel unstable. And when none of that worked, when you didn't collapse under her silence, her plan backfired. Because the man she expected to chase stood still. And in that stillness, she saw a version of you she couldn't manipulate. She saw someone whose value didn't rise or fall based on her moods. She saw someone whose identity wasn't built on her approval. And in that moment, the real reason she pulled away came full circle. She didn't need a man to fight for her. She needed to feel like she mattered without needing to test it. But the test failed, because it tried to shake a man who had already found his center. This is where most men crumble. They feel her distance and take it as a personal threat, so they start doing too much. The long paragraphs trying to explain, the late-night calls asking, "Did I do something wrong?" The desperate attempts to reignite something she deliberately dimmed. They don't realize. Every effort they make under pressure only confirms her control. And every time they chase, she pulls back even more. But you didn't beg. You didn't bargain. You didn't treat her fading interest like a fire alarm. Because you understood one timeless truth. Masculine energy doesn't chase validation. It moves with quiet conviction. You knew that reacting would cost you everything. Not just her respect, but your own. So you let her drift. Not because you didn't care, but because you weren't going to lose yourself just to keep her close. You didn't show up with roses and regret. You didn't break your boundaries for the illusion of love. You kept your spine straight, and that's where everything shifted. Because when a man refuses to over-explain his worth, he forces her to reconsider hers. The world tells you to fight for her, but no one tells you that sometimes the fight is a trap. A silent invitation to surrender your identity for a moment of emotional relief. You didn't take that bait. You stayed grounded. And in doing so, you became the man she didn't know how to handle, a man who doesn't chase confusion. He values clarity more than closeness. She'll never say it out loud, but she wanted something deeper than attention. She wanted to be seen. Not just complimented, understood, and somewhere in her emotional withdrawal, she hoped you'd chase. Not because she needed your words, because she wanted confirmation that she still mattered in your world. But here's the twist. She didn't want chaos. She wanted power, the quiet, invisible kind. To feel that a single shift in her tone could rattle your confidence. To know that pulling away would pull you in. But when you didn't move, when you didn't flinch, you broke the cycle. And in that break, something unexpected happened. She realized the power she sought, the control she thought she had, meant nothing to a man who wasn't trying to win her, but simply to be with her. If it was real, you didn't play her game. You held frame. You didn't retaliate or romanticize. You respected both her freedom and your own. And in that dignified distance, you became the mirror, a reflection of what she didn't know she was craving: masculine stillness, emotional depth without noise. A man who doesn't move unless the movement means something. What she secretly hoped for is a man strong enough to stay when it's real, and strong enough to walk away when it's not. You didn't give her validation. You gave her clarity, and that clarity, it pierced deeper than any confession ever could. It was subtle at first. You weren't texting less to prove a point. You were simply living. Your world didn't pause when she pulled back. It adjusted. Quietly, no angry messages, no passive-aggressive stories, no "look what you're missing" games, just silence. Dignified, grounded, almost unsettling kind of silence. She didn't expect that. She thought distance would light a fire in you. But instead, it lit a mirror in her. Because your silence wasn't absence. It was presence, just not in her orbit anymore. She began to feel it in the smallest ways. The way your name stopped appearing at the top of her phone. The way her thoughts returned to you when nothing else was filling the silence. She wondered, did he move on? Or was he never as shaken as I imagined? It wasn't the kind of silence that screams. It was the kind that reflects. And every time she looked into that space, she saw a man she didn't know how to reach anymore. Because you weren't ignoring her. You were honoring yourself. That's what made the silence so loud. You didn't break the connection. You just stopped feeding it on her terms. And in doing so, you changed the rules without saying a word. She felt it in her chest, not because you left with a bang, but because you stayed still long enough for her to realize she might have pushed away something rare, and now silence she created became the very thing she couldn't ignore. It didn't hit her all at once. Regret never does. It started as a flicker, a memory of you laughing in that quiet, effortless way. A flash of a moment when she felt safe with you and didn't even know it. Then it grew louder. She noticed your absence in the spaces that once felt full, in conversations that now feel forced, in men who try too hard to impress but lack that one thing you never had to announce: presence. She scrolls through old texts, reads what you used to say. Not the sweet things, but the calm things. The kind of words that didn't beg to be heard, but couldn't be forgotten either. She never thought she'd miss that calm, that certainty. It's that man who didn't flinch. But now, in her quieter hours, it all lands at once. You weren't just a man in her life. You were the man who never needed her chaos to feel real. And that terrified her, because you didn't fight for her. You didn't fall apart. You didn't try to win back something that never should have needed convincing. And that's what shook her the most. You stood your ground. You didn't chase. You didn't play. You simply reminded her through action, not words, that you're not the man who fights to be loved. You're the man who gets remembered because he didn't have to. And now, she's left with a silence that echoes far deeper than words. A truth she can't undo. You didn't fight for her, because the right woman wouldn't make you. And in losing you, she didn't just lose love. She lost her chance to know a man who was never desperate, because he knew exactly who he was. You're not just attractive. You're unforgettable. Some men earn attention by chasing noise. You earned respect by mastering silence. In a world where validation is sold in likes, reactions, and replies, you stood still. And in doing so, you became rare. Not because you were cold, but because you refused to fight for someone who needed you to lose yourself to be loved. That's the quiet strength most never talk about. It's not flashy. It's not loud. But it shakes people to their core. Because when you didn't fight for her, you weren't walking away from connection. You were walking toward your identity. This is who you are now. It's unshaken, unapologetic, unforgettable. And if somewhere deep inside you feel that shift, that quiet pride in how far you've come, then let this be your mirror. You're not here to be chosen by someone who plays games. You're here to be remembered by someone who wakes up to your worth. Even if it's too late, don't follow for validation. Follow because you've become the kind of man who doesn't flinch, because he finally knows you're not just attractive, you're unforgettable.